700 million people. This is how many people are currently living in extreme poverty around the world right now, on less than $1.90 a day. Clearly, eradicating poverty is one of humanity's most demanding issues, and economic development must be pursued to help achieve this goal. Let me draw your attention to another worrying statistic: 1.2 billion people. This is an estimate of how many people could be forced to leave their homes, their livelihoods, and their families due to climate-related events by the end of 2050. Clearly, managing climate change is another concerning issue that we must address now before its consequences become irreversible. However, what if I told you that solving one of these problems compromises the other? In fact, pursuing economic development and managing climate change appear to be two directly contradicting objectives. Let me tell you why. As developing countries initially see rises in GDP per capita, this is often accompanied by the rise of industry and higher disposable incomes, which people tend to spend on products such as washing machines, cars, and flights. These all lead to increased greenhouse gas emissions that we know are associated with rising sea levels and more extreme weather events. Now, this damage to the natural environment is further exacerbated by the growth of cities and large urban areas, which are often linked with resource exhaustion and urban sprawl. Now, in spite of all that, countries do end up seeing a turning point. As more carbon and fuel-efficient technology becomes more affordable, these are implemented into industrial processes, household appliances, and vehicles, serving to reduce their impact on the natural environment. Furthermore, it is around this point that the general public become increasingly aware of their impact on the natural environment and start to lobby governments and businesses to enact tighter environmental regulations and start using more renewable sources of energy. At this point, countries tend to see GDP per capita rise while simultaneously seeing their levels of environmental degradation fall. A prime example of this is the UK, which, having seen a period of deindustrialization, saw GDP per capita grow by 70.7% between 1985 and 2016, whilst also seeing CO2 emissions fall by 32.4% in the same time frame. So ultimately, this begs the question: can we decouple this relationship between economic growth and environmental degradation in the initial stages of a country's development? Well, in short, yes, we can. However, this is highly dependent on a number of variables, with two in particular holding substantial significance. Firstly, on a local level, national governments must ensure that growth is facilitated by policies and measures to ensure that it is as sustainable as possible in developing countries. For example, in Curitiba, a developing city in southeast Brazil, the redevelopment of roads in the city by implementing arterial roads served to reduce CO2 emissions by 25%, mainly through the increased uptake of public transport and car sharing. Now, not only has this evidently helped reduce levels of environmental degradation in a developing city, but the redevelopment of the roads served as an investment by the government into the infrastructure of the city, triggering what economists refer to as the multiplier effect. Now, as previously unemployed workers are employed by the government to help construct these new roads, they see increased incomes, which they spend in local markets. And local stores and businesses, having seen increased demand and increased profit, start to hire more workers to help facilitate for this, who also see increased incomes, bringing us back to where we started. As you can see, this creates a virtuous cycle of spending and employment, boosting the economic development of the region as a whole. Now, the second variable is that there must be much greater international participation and cooperation in ensuring that growth is as sustainable as possible worldwide. Now, this includes developed countries such as the UK and the USA ramping up investment in renewable energy sources to make it more affordable for developing countries and increase their consumption. Furthermore, countries must pool together funds to help developing countries grow as sustainably as possible, such as the $100 billion agreed to be given annually for this reason at COP26. Now, as much as this seems like an arduous and expensive journey, there does seem to be light at the end of the tunnel. The International Energy Agency themselves have said that it is entirely possible for the planet to reach net zero emissions by 2050, but has also emphasized how current pledges made by governments today are insufficient to meet this goal. For example, We need global electricity production to come from 90% of renewable energy sources by 2030, which requires investment in this sector to jump from $0.5 trillion over the past 5 years to $1.6 trillion by 2030, which is a considerable leap that we must make now in order to get closer to achieving our goal. To conclude, I'd like to quote the words of Greta Thunberg. They've now had 30 years of blah, blah, blah. And where has that led us? It's one thing simply stating how we can decouple this relationship and how it theoretically works. Yet, it's another actually carrying it out. We cannot prolong this process, as the more and more we do, the more and more out of reach it becomes. It is imperative that we start now in order to have any hope of solving this issue before it's too late. Thank you for listening.